That's one way to put more money in your pocket, or at least keep the money in your pocket, right?
And really, with the competitive market and multiple offers and the competition that's coming to a lot of listings, it makes a lot of sense to offer that term to win the deal.
All right, so Kristin, occupancy, post-close occupancy. First, what does that mean?
So occupancy and use agreement is an agreement between both parties, buyer and seller, that the seller can occupy the home after the closing is completed for a finite amount of time.
Why would a buyer even offer for the seller to stay in beyond closing?
It's a great question. So the market's really competitive right now and inventory is historically low. So oftentimes the seller needs to move, wants to move, but they don't quite know where they're going to go yet. And they have the complications of getting the cash that's locked up in their current home liquid before they can make the move to the next place, right? So sometimes offering a little bit of extended time in the house after closing, once that money has been freed up for them to go move on, is a huge benefit. And really, with the competitive market and multiple offers and the competition that's coming to a lot of listings, it makes a lot of sense to offer that term to win the deal.
And so what happens with the money? So you're a buyer, you close on your home, seller's living in it. Do you have to start paying, or how does that work?
Yeah, so as the seller, right, once you close the deal, your mortgage is paid off the following day or the same day, and you're no longer obligated to make any mortgage payments. And you could have agreed to a number of things with that buyer. You could be paying the buyer principal, interest, taxes, and insurance on their new mortgage.
Yep.
The buyer maybe offered you that time in the house for free to be the chosen one to buy your house in the first place. So a couple of different things could happen. And as the buyer, when you give a seller occupancy, you can offer it for free. And sometimes that helps you get to the top of the stack when the deal situation is competitive. And the benefit to you is that your first mortgage payment is most of the time rolled into what you're bringing to the closing table, right? So this is the month of May. If you were to close a transaction this month as a buyer, you have no June mortgage payment that's going to come due, right? And your first payment's going to be due on July 1st. So it's really easy to offer a seller 30 days extra in the house.
Yeah, and I'll say this, sometimes when you offer the occupancy period, usually 60 days, up to 60 days, because that's what the financing wants, and there's some other options that Kristin can run you through, but the seller may not even use all that time.
It's
right?
true.
So you can offer a carrot that maybe they don't even use. Maybe they only use 45, maybe they only use 30. But when you made that offer, it was intriguing to the seller, and it was one of the reasons you got accepted, because you were willing to offer that much time, even though the seller may not even use all of it.
For sure. Oftentimes I have a seller client who says that they need 60 days, and then during the course of the transaction, they're out on closing day and they're ready to hand over the keys, right? But it's nice to offer someone that security blanket in a way. And the average buyer using an FHA or a conventional loan or a rural development loan can offer up to 60 days if it's going to be their primary residence, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. They want you to take possession on day 60.
Yeah. And as a seller, one of the benefits to offering this, or receiving this, I should say, from a buyer and having it negotiated by a professional realtor like yourself, is that that's one way to put more money in your pocket, or at least keep the money in your pocket, right? Without having to necessarily drive up the sale price.
For sure.
Right? So if you don't have to, let's just say the new payment for the buyer is $3,000. Now you're not having to come out of pocket $3,000, right? So you've essentially netted $6,000 more without paying transfer tax on that, without paying commissions on that, without paying title insurance on that, and without having to appraise for that. So it does net you more without necessarily having to drive strictly sale price in order to do it.
100%. And what we didn't talk about is the ability for some types of buyers to extend that occupancy agreement even further. So a VA buyer is not capped on how long they can offer you to stay in the home, and neither is a cash buyer. I had a client last year who paid cash for a home, and the seller was going through a divorce and needed to finish out the school year inside of that home, and my buyer gave them 6 months of time in that house after closing to stay.
Right,
6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
And if you're curious as to what financing is the best financing, check out our VA video on that. We'd love to walk you through it. So what are the risks? Okay, so if you're on the buy side, and let's just say you're this scenario we just walked through, you're giving them 6 months to stay as a buyer, assuming you're paid cash or you have besides the financial aspect of it, right? What are the risks that the buyer inherits as a result of that?
Well, the risk is that you've acquired a tenant, right? So you own this home now and the seller's staying on effectively as your tenant, and there could be damages to the property. And the way we offset that risk is that at the time that you close, a damage deposit is held in escrow by the title company, just like the security deposit. And at the time that the key exchange is ready to happen, everyone walks through the property and you sign a release giving that security deposit back to the seller.
Now let's say that same scenario and you're now the tenant, you were the seller, Now you're the tenant. Are you carrying any risk?
In a way. So typically the seller will keep their insurance policy on the contents of the home, and the buyer has an insurance policy as well, similar to maybe a condo where they're insuring the structure.
Yep.
Right. So as long as you keep your homeowner's insurance intact, no more
Good.
risk than renting.
Yeah, so that's pretty much everything about occupancy. If you have more detailed questions about your scenario, we provide a year in advance custom moving plan. So go ahead and reach out. We can talk you through all these timelines and what the scenario is best for you and how to approach it. So love to chat with you. Thank you.